All right, so we're putting together the recording of Is the National Publicity Summit Really Worth It? And we'll give you a little more detail on exactly who we are. I'm Jess Todtfeld. Scott Lorenz is on the line as well. And Scott, how should we lead off? What do you think? Is it really worth it?
Well, I think people should be the judge. After they hear this conversation today, they'll be able to make that determination.
Right.
I think it's worth it. I've been going to it for 11 years now. I think it's worth every penny.
Right. I was there. I was a producer who was one of the people being pitched. And since then, I'll explain it on a deeper level. Since then, I've been working in a different way with the summit on the other side after I left television and left being a producer. So some interesting things happened. But let's explain who the heck we are first before we really dive deep. So take it away, Scott.
Well, I'm a book publicist. I've been in the PR business for 20-some-odd years, 25 years. I work with doctors, lawyers, authors, entrepreneurs, startups, iPhone app developers, and I've promoted all types of things for all types of people, from billionaires to adventurous to guys in the garage with a brand new startup. So I love publicity. I love promotion and marketing, and I love books. I've always been a big fan of books. When I was in college, well, I didn't read a lot of those books, but I brought in lectures for our university. I was a director of student activities for the University of Nevada, Las Vegas during my tenure way back when. And I brought in some terrific authors, just about everybody who was hot back in the day, for lecture series. Everybody from Leonard Nimoy to David Frost to Eric von Däniken, all those folks. And I've always had a great interest in books. So one of my customers decided to write a book and asked me if I could promote it. I said, sure, let's go. In fact, even back in college, I promoted a book by Howard Hughes, one of his aides, way back when. So it's kind of funny how it all, I have a long background in book promotion and so forth.
The world was pointing you in that direction even then.
Right.
That's right. It's funny. So I'll give everyone a little background on me. My name is Jess Todtfeld, and I was a TV producer on the national level. I worked at ABC, NBC, and Fox. And I did that for 13 years, and it was great and fun, but at a certain point, it was time to do something different. So I changed and started the next chapter of my life, which is I started a communication training company, and it's really two parts. I help people who want to have specific and definable results when it comes to media interviews or speeches. So essentially media training and presentation training. But long before that, I'm going to explain how I fit in with the summit here. In say 1998, I think it was about 98, I was on the show Fox and Friends, and Steve Harrison reached out to me, and they had just started. I don't know if it was the very first summit or the second summit, but I think it was the first one. And they said, we want to do this thing, and it's like speed dating with journalists, and we want you to be one of the people. And I think back then he was even making the personal calls and emails. And then they were really courting me because they were trying to get this thing off the ground. And then when I went to the summit, it was nice. It was easy. It was a couple of hours. As a producer, they put you on this stage. They have a whole panel, and Steve asks questions about what you like and what you don't like and what really works and what are some inside secrets for breaking through and all that stuff, so you get to kind of feel good about yourself. You're giving information. And then they break away, and you go into this next room, and they set up kind of little chutes, little lanes, I guess I could call it. They have all the producers there, and there's a big sign behind them saying whatever show or outlet they're from. Some people are obviously print or radio. And then people get a number, and they come up every 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes, and they get to come up and say, here's my story or my pitch, and I have this thing, or I wrote a book about this thing, and what do you think? Do you want to do it? And I would leave there with certainly a number of folks who would be good, and there were some folks who weren't so great, and that's just life. It's some people are going to have something really interesting that works for me and doesn't work for somebody else. But yeah, it was a good experience, and I'll come back to it in a minute and tell you now after I let you chat about how I ended up making my way back after I left television. So how did you end up going initially, Scott?
Well, I think it was I saw a YouTube video about the first one, and I was a member of their organization by virtue of the fact that I received their databases. I bought their databases of media outlets years ago, and I also subscribed to a newsletter that talked about book marketing for, I don't know, 20 years or so. And then they just talked about the PR Summit, and I said, okay, I'm going to check it out. I watched a little video on YouTube, and I said, I'm going. I was so excited because this was an opportunity to meet these high-level producers, media outlet representatives, and reporters, just people you would never get in the same. It's amazing to me sometimes that there's this many people in the same room with this much power. I walk in there sometimes, I look and I see, the top producer from Good Morning America or producer from CNN. This last summit, there were like 4 or 5 people from Fox News, people from Fox and Friends, people from the health division at Fox News. That was particularly interesting to me because I have a couple of books on promoting their health and fitness related and medical related books. And then it's just amazing. And here's the bottom line, because it boils down to this. If you were to go to New York, just land there yourself and go knock on doors, you can't even get in the door of, and after 9/11, everything changed, man. They don't even let you talk to these people. You cannot go walk in and go see a producer at Fox or CNN or ABC News. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They don't know you from a bale of hay. I can't even imagine trying to do that today. Even getting them a book, you got to hand it to a courier, and the courier has to take it up. And so many things changed after 9/11, it's not even funny. It's all, everybody's in a cocoon in a way. So to be able to meet these top producers and top media representatives in a room and give them a pitch is fantastic. And for dollar, you can't beat the value. You just can't beat it.
Now, and you're a publicist.
Yeah, and I'm a publicist, right? And I have databases that I buy. I spend thousands of dollars a year on databases trying to reach members of the media. And I got to tell you something. Email was great a few years ago, but it's fallen on deaf ears these days. So we're back to face-to-face. And this is an event. The PR Summit is an event that allows you to meet some of these top people face-to-face. Some people you create a relationship with, and some you don't. And some people like your story, some people won't. But the nice part about it, when you're making a pitch, minute-long pitch, you got to get right to the point. You heard of an elevator speech, okay? Obviously, people know about elevator speeches, the time it takes to give a talk about you, your book, or whatever, from the time you get from the ground floor to the floor number 5 or 10 or 20 or whatever. That's the elevator pitch. This is what you have to do at this event. You've got to be able to get to the point quickly. You've got to be succinct, and this event actually does train you to do that. I've sharpened my own skills in doing this, and I've been making pitches on various products and services and books for 20 some odd years.
Now, a lot of people who go are pitching themselves or their book or, their own thing. But you're a publicist, you're pitching a whole bunch of different clients.
Right. So I'll size up the media outlet. Let's say there's somebody like somebody from Fox who focuses on health. Okay, well, I'm not going to pitch the historical fiction book on Hungary to this person, okay? I'll pitch the diet book about the new sugar-free diet and stuff like that, or an iPhone app I'm representing that's about rotation diets. I'll pitch that to that media rep. And then I'll save the historical fiction book for someone who writes for the Smithsonian Magazine, or for someone who is interested in that, like Cigar Aficionado, one of those. There's a rep that freelances for that magazine that attends, and they are interested in that type of thing. So you got to know what to pitch to who.
So you said, what is it, 11 years you've been going there?
Correct, 11 years.
And they do it twice a year sometimes.
Right.
So the average person and we're recording this to be of help to the person who's saying, should I go? Should I not go? Is it good? We figure we'll just record us talking for a little while about the ins and outs. But you've paid, sometimes twice a year.
Right. It's very expensive, but it's an integral part of my operation. So I allocate for it, and you're
kind of smart as a publicist. Your thought process is you're essentially dividing the cost amongst, you
a few other accounts.
Clients. Yeah,
right.
You have multiple clients, they're paying you. So in your mind, you're thinking, okay, well, essentially, I'm going to be going and pitching on their behalf. Do you charge them a little extra, or do you just in your
No.
mind just build it in? You know,
No, I don't charge any extra.
X number of clients divided across them, and if you're getting more business for them, then it's a plus.
Right, exactly.
You know, then you're doing your job, and they stick with you longer, and then
right. I mean,
back.
At the end of the day, I got to deliver the goods. You know, nobody wants to hear about how hard I'm working. They want to hear about when am I going to be booked on this show, or when is my next TV appearance, or when am I going to get some ink, and that's what people want. So this allows me to facilitate that expectation.
And I guess it's been working out for you. What kind of results have you gotten?
I've had clients on Fox and Friends. I've had clients.
My old show, not through me.
Yeah, your old show. I pitched you way back when.
You did.
Way back when. And back in the olden days.
Yeah.
And I've had. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, I can't even remember all these things because it's just. I was on. I just this last summit in the fall. I pitched a writer from thestreet.com, and we had 2 stories before I left the room on the calendar for clients. They write about financial stories and so forth.
Right.
Some of the people that go there are really anxious to try to help out, and if they like you and they like your story or your book or your whatever, then they're going to jump on it.
So I'm going to tell you the best thing that ever came out of the summit for me personally, which is because Steve Harrison kind of put me in that little world, and he invited me to some of these other stages where they would have, say, 4 big producers, somebody like that, sitting on the stage, and he would give some advice, and he would kind of ask all of us, and it gave, and I hate to say star power, but, it was for people in the room. When he would go to a book expo or some other big event, at the time it was like Mark Victor Hansen events, he's the Chicken Soup for the Soul guy, and because I was kind of in these circles, and even some of the speakers who come to the summit, it got me thinking bigger than what I was doing then, which was okay, but I was getting kind of tired of it. And it was, hey, I could, maybe I should start my own business. And this is shortly after 2000, when my first son was born in 2000. I was saying, I need to build something that's my own. So I ended up building the business that I have now. And then in 2007, when I officially, it took me a couple of years to kind of figure out the business side and like, how do I do this and all that. But when I officially left television, I said to them, I'm not going to be able to be a producer at the summit anymore. You guys were amazing. You really put the ideas in my head that led for me to have this freedom that I have to have my own business, and I thank you for it. But I guess, that's it. So I to their credit, they said, well, look, we like you. We like that when you've been at the summit, and other folks do this, it was besides me, but when someone would come up and the pitch didn't work for me, I would give them ideas. I would say, if you change that pitch and you just said it just this way, it would work for that guy over there on that show. But because that's what he looks for. Or here's a phone number for somebody I work with, and they sit 10 feet from me, but would it be perfect. That's what they're looking for. They're the health reporter. I don't do anything.
Right.
So they were like, you know what, you've always, kind of done right by us. And people who go to the summit will meet some people like that, meaning some of the producers will be exactly like that. Will there be some people who are grumpy there? Sure. You walk down the street, you're going to meet somebody who's grumpy, and then people in between. But you'll definitely meet some people that were doing some of what I did. But anyway, so they said to me, Jess, it's a shame for us to just all walk away. What if you did some sort of workshop day before the summit, and what if it was part media training, but also part, really giving people everything that's in your head so that they can do a great job at the summit. So we came up, I did this thing the day before. I'm not promoting it today because the idea of this call was for us to just talk about, is the summit worth it? But we put that together, and it was fantastic. And I've been doing this now since 2007, twice a year. So it's been amazing, and even just through that, I've met amazing people. And I'm going to give now, because I said something somewhat promotional, I'm going to flip over to the other side. When you go to the summit, some of the best things that happen are the things that happen in between the actual scheduled events. Meaning, in between meeting all the producers and the media folks, just all of those people in that room who are attendees are already at this this bigger qualified level, as they say in the world of sales. You know, they've spent this money to show up, to fly from all over the world. People in that room are from Australia and the UK and China and Africa, and you name wherever it is, they've
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then obviously some people, like you said, I know when you came in last time, we went out to dinner, and a bunch of folks from that summit came with us. There were at least 2 millionaires at that table, multimillionaires, who, hey, let me tell you what's inside my head. And some of them, Scott and I like to think we've been doing this for a while, and I don't pretend I know every last thing, but we're going to have to do another one of these recordings because there's stuff Scott does that goes so far beyond what a publicist does. We got to build on that. But there was a guy at the table who was like, all right, here's what I do, and here's what's different. And both Scott and I
we were taking notes.
We were taking notes. We pulled up that chair and we're like, wow, keep going. You're on a roll.
Right on the money there, because the people you meet at this thing it's not just the media, it's the people that your peers in the room that you meet, and you actually get to know quite a few people because you're there with them for 5 days or more. And
right.
It's very beneficial just because there's the energy. I love going there too, Jess, because of the energy. There's so much excitement.
Yeah.
It's very beneficial to me personally just to tap into the energy, honestly.
To their credit, we should talk about the people who run the summit. I mean, I mentioned Steve Harrison briefly, but after that first summit, they added all of this training that they build in, and you know better than me because you receive it. I see some of it. It's essentially all these calls and training calls and how you get your pitches together, and both written and verbally, and they're just all this prep work that people can take part in. They should take part in it. It's included. But the biggest one is, I guess, working on those one-sheeters, which is basically boiling down everything you want to pitch to the media and getting it onto a sheet. And that came from the feedback back from when I was in that first one, which is people would walk up with stacks of papers and let me give you my book. And if you're meeting close to 100 people, they only allow 100 attendees in there to keep it real tight and intimate. And they say there are 100 media people there too. But the thing is, you got to keep it tight. So the feedback we gave was too much stuff. Everyone's giving us too much stuff. We had a stack a mile high. So they said, well, what if we did it as a one-sheeter? That's what we want. And if we want to know more, we'll ask for more. Then we'll say, great, I love this. Give me more. Or, you know what, I'll pitch it. This is plenty. So they give you lots of other training.
So they give you that, and that's really an important part to talk about, because they do give people training. So if you've never talked to anybody in the media, and if you've never really dealt with this sort of thing, then they will give you the training that you need to prepare you to not only make the pitch, but to make follow-up calls or make a follow-up email. They take you from whatever level you're at. Okay. Obviously, if you wrote a book, you've got to be fairly competent. They take you from wherever you are with your level of expertise in dealing with the media and take you to the next level. And so, I mean, even like I say, like I've been going for 11 years, and I am learning plenty at these events because the publishing industry is changing so fast. It changes just all the time. I mean, I got an email from Amazon the other day that talked about this new countdown thing that they're doing. It's like, oh my God, it's never ending. Okay, and the publishing industry is changing so fast. It's a project just to keep up with it. And of course, the media is changing, and what works today will not work tomorrow. So, but one thing still does work, and that's getting publicity for a book or a project or an invention. That still works because you're reaching millions of people or hundreds of thousands with the exposure, and you still can't beat the price of publicity, which is basically free, although you do have to pay a little bit to get it organized and put it in such a form that the media will want to talk about it. Okay.
Right.
So,
here's a question that I get from people the summit folks who make their way through my workshop. They after the fact, they've gotten I can't tell you who got what interviews, but the ones who are chatting with me got interviews, and then they say, how do I turn it into book sales, and how do I do this? And I think each of us at the levels try to make sure they understand this and explain this to them early. But you have to get your strategy together early. A lot of times, so this is a big, I'm going to just tell this part, but it's a big part that I build out when I work with people. When people do an interview, they usually set the bar low, which is as long as I don't look like an idiot. That's where they set the bar.
Yeah, that's right.
And most people just say, you know what? I mean, if I get the interview, I'll get the interview, and I'll just deal with that later. Or I know, I give speeches, or I've been in front of people. I'm not that nervous, and I'll be fine. And they go out and they do an interview, and they may do an interview that's fine, but they don't necessarily turn into something. So that's really a secondary concern. So step one is, you want to go get yourself the interviews. But step two, which is really, you have to think about it even before you do the interviews, is how do you convert those? So when I say I'm giving pieces away, you have to have a plan to, the best thing that you could plug in an interview, this is not when pitching the media. Pitching, you're giving them a great story that they say, this is amazing for my audience, will love it. Let's pretend it's how to lose weight while eating fast food. You know, wow, America eats a lot of fast food. This sounds like fun. Do you have 7 tips? Yes. Okay, fine. Then we'll do that. We'll put them on the screen. You do your interview. Everyone who's watching it says, that was fantastic. Turn off the TV, go to work. And you say, but I have this whole book about, healthy eating. And they left. So what you need to do, here comes my takeaway that I'm giving to all of you, what you take away from today's interview. One thing is, if you promote something free on your website, where you say, and make sure it's something really good that's free. I mean, sometimes a free chapter, it's okay. It's like if I had a television show and I said, I'm going to let you watch, and let's pretend it's an evening drama. I'm going to let you watch the first 10 minutes. Well, that's frustrating to me. I don't want to see the first 10 minutes. So that's why I never respond to I'll give you a free chapter, unless I know I'm already going to get the book. Then I might read a little bit of it and say, yeah, I'm getting the whole book. But you got to give something like, if you want this list and the finder for how to, find the places with the healthiest food, or my document, my short little, I hate to call it white paper because that sounds boring, my list of the 42 most important things. I always like to pick funny numbers. The 42 most important things that you can do to lose weight without going to the gym. So it's like, gee, all right, I'll check that out. And then the interviewer says, where can I find that? Well, you got to, they get it free. It's right on my website. What's the name of that website? And then you give your website, and people go there and they have to opt in to get it. So now you've taken an interview, and you've gone and you've driven some people somewhere, instead of just, hey, here's the stuff, and I hope you remember me. You have to be a little more proactive, and that's just one strategy to doing it. And I'm going to let you talk and say stuff, but I just throw in one more as I'm thinking about it, which is, once people have those interviews. So I just said this to a woman who was in one of my workshops. I'm trying to think. I think she was on The View. And she said, yeah, but nobody, I don't think anybody bought anything off my website that day. I said, do you realize what kind of marketing collateral you have right now? Go put that thing on your website and focus your efforts now on driving people to your website. I mean, it's part of the whole, talk about credibility. I go to your website.
Exactly.
The View, forget it.
You've got to use the media hits as you got to use the media hits as a credibility booster, and you leverage stuff. You leverage. Okay, quick story. One of my clients, we got him an interview, and I got him dozens of interviews. But then somebody heard him in the audience, called him up, and said, "I want you to come give a keynote speech to my group," and it was a group of his competitors. There was in the banking industry, and they paid him $10,000 for that. It's like, wow, you know how many books you guys sell to make $10,000? Okay, so he gave a keynote. Then while he was there, a couple of people handed him his business card and said they wanted to go work for him instead of the company they were working for. It was very interesting. You just don't know where this stuff's going to go. And people sometimes ask me, well, it's a small radio station. It's only got 500 people. I go, look, if you were in front of a room of people, of 500 people, would you go to that? I mean, if you were invited to speak in front of a local civic club and it had 500 people, would you go? Oh, yeah, 500. Just now, turn it around. Now they're listening in their car, driving down the road. Why wouldn't you want to talk to those people? could be 500. It could be 5,000. You don't know who's listening. I had a case in Texas one time where one of my clients, it was the inventor of a device that was for organizing garages. This was, in fact, his name was, you've heard of the DeLorean car. That was invented by John DeLorean. Well, his brother Jack invented this device for tool storage. Simple device. I had him on a radio interview in Texas, and a writer from the Houston Chronicle heard the story, called up, booked him for an interview for his column in the Houston Chronicle. Then the head buyer at like Ace or ACO was reading that article and then called my client up directly and bought 20,000 of these things for ACO. It was either ACO or Ace Hardware, all over the country. From a radio. Wow. This all could be traced back to that radio interview. And I got stories like that all day long that I can talk about where you just don't know who's listening and you don't know what's going to happen. And that's why Jack Canfield said he will do any interview anytime with anybody. And that's how they made Chicken Soup for the Soul the success that it is today. Really. Wow. If you look back at, in fact, you can see a long list of all his radio. He talked to, radio people that had one, like two listeners in, South Dakota or something. It was ridiculous. I mean, he literally talked to everybody. To his credit. So if Jack Canfield can do it, and it led to the success that they obviously have achieved, then everybody else should be doing it too. Okay?
Right. 100 million plus books.
Exactly.
And I'm going to build on that, which is, so I'm going to make it one step better. And I didn't bring it up in the beginning. I probably should have. But I after leaving TV, when I was promoting one of my books, and I have a fourth one coming out, of course, all on communication topics. But when I was promoting one of them, I had a friend who said, well, you're the media guy. You better do this thing bigger than anybody else. And I laughed and I said, okay, what does that mean? He said, how about Guinness record big? And I laughed again and I said, is there a Guinness record for interviews? Okay. Just like a lot of people listening, gee, I'd be happy to have a handful of interviews, let alone I need to have to set the record. But there was a lot floating in my head about what works and what doesn't work and what producers say yes to, and all that. So next thing I know, we're trying to book not just a handful, but a crazy amount. We ended up booking and we did 112 interviews in a 24-hour period, and they had to be 5 minutes longer. And I set this Guinness record. But here's some of the takeaways. And I'm not, patting myself on the back saying that. I'm trying to use it to say so I've been there. So how do you make more out of radio interviews? Well, one thing, obviously I mentioned before, you want to get people to the site by giving them something for free that's really great and they opt in, and then you have their email address and now you can market to them, but you have to do it in a real permission-based way, and you have to be always leading with value and all that stuff. But here comes the second one. You can do basically what you're all seeing today right now. If you're listening to this audio through YouTube, we basically took an audio and just married an image to it. And you can do it in a cruder way or a fancier way, or you can use a lot of video editing tools that are out there to basically say, here's an audio, here's just a graphic that has some faces in the title, and here's who it is, and boom. So you could do this with the radio, and I've done it, because sometimes, first off, nowadays you can ask a lot of the radio stations, hey, is it possible for me to get an MP3 recording? And they'll often say, yeah, we'll email it to you. We record everything and we'll shoot it off to you, and you can, wherever you put it. But the problem is people don't know where to put it. But you can, if you marry an image to it, you can now have it as a YouTube video. You can put all those keywords, and now talk about leverage. You've taken something and you've built it bigger. So outside of the original 500 people, like you said, who may have been listening that first time, you could leave that there for 3 years, and you may have an extra, 10,000 people who watch that video. You may have another 100 people who watch that video. Okay.
It could work for you while you're sleeping and while you're not paying any attention. That's the beauty of that sort of thing. I have people call me all the time from all over the world. I just had a phone call today from Spain from an author who wanted me to promote his book. This thing works while I'm sleeping. It's all wonderful. Right. And it can work for an author, too, but you've got to, take the first step and get going and get it organized. And you're building a brand. I think in the end, a book is really it's like a small startup. A book is a brand. A book is a startup. You don't expect that retail establishment that you've started to make money out of the gate. Very few do right out of the gate. You've got to work it for a while and make it produce for you. So it's
and you know what? When you go to the summit, a lot of the ideas that are floating around are other ways that you can create revenue from the stuff that you're doing. Just like you said, the guy gave a speech and he got 10,000, and you're like, gee, how many books I have to sell? It's still an end to the means. One of the speaking strategies is that's kind of, the other half of my business, the speaking side, is you can bundle in books. Well, you're getting the 10,000. Now you can say that you just sold 500 or 1,000 books or however many people were part of that organization and are in the room. Okay, fine. Then great. There are a lot of interesting strategies that people do. And in those early days when I was a producer who was kind of, listening in on what else are they talking about, I did not have a book yet. But I thought, you know what? I could go home, I can plug a microphone into my computer, and I can hit record on a little, sound recorder that comes free with the computer, and I can talk for an hour. And that's what I did. I think I called it Secrets to Free Publicity on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I sold a whole bunch of those for $30. But the bigger thing, a book might be $20, $15. I was selling them for $30. But the bigger thing was it opened me up to all these other people. And at a certain point, I think I became smarter and you and I have had these conversations about the free strategy. You give stuff to people. It's like, you give and you shall receive, but you have to have the philosophy of you give to give, not give to receive. But when you give, things do come back to you. So then I ended up using that and giving it to certain people. And then the thing that happened was people said, oh, wow, Jess is a good guy, or he really knows his stuff. Let's have him be a part of other things. Only bigger things happen. So I'm only throwing that out there because there will be ideas like what we're saying that will make bigger things happen. But I want to talk about the people who run the summit.
Yes.
So Steve Harrison, his brother Bill Harrison, they own Bradley Communications. They've told me the story. I guess they bought it in the 80s, and it was just a newsletter or something for kind of like the RTIR, I don't know,
radio TV
magazine.
Radio TV interview report, and they sent that out to thousands of radio and TV producers all over the country. And
with story ideas.
They have story ideas, and people buy a half-page ad in that. It's 8.5 by 11 format in a booklet format, and that goes into radio stations. And you can't afford to just send out anything you mail now is 42 cents, and it's even more if you put a couple of 3 pages in there. So do the math. Send out 5,000 of anything times 50 cents a piece. That'll break the bank. Not to mention the printing. So they bundle up a bunch of people who are in who authors and inventors and so forth, and they send them all out in one booklet to these producers. Right. And you get and then the producer sits there and goes through it and he goes, oh, there's a guy I like, or this is a gal that sounds good, or this book sounds interesting, or we'll get this guy on. And then they call and book it, and that was very successful for years. Still is. I
remember certainly when I first started in TV, I would be thrilled when it would show up because I could go through and find something. And I worked before cable news on the cable late night talk show. So they always wanted 2 to 3 things a night that were fun, just something different and something fun or out of the norm. Plus, we didn't get as many celebrities as Jimmy Fallon or whoever else is on late night. But anyway, that was helpful. But back to the people who run it. The Harrisons run it. Steve Harrison is really the face, and he talks. And what do you make of what they do and their
they're terrific.
Integrity?
They're terrific.
All that stuff.
They're the real deal. They're the real deal. People call me up and they say, "Are these guys legit?" They're the most legit people I know. They're so helpful and so upstanding, and they're first class. The people, the organization is first class. I know a lot of the folks because I've been going there for 11 years. And they're just wonderful people, all of them. They're just a joy to work with. They are there to really help you achieve more for your book or your business or for your invention or whatever. And I know I couldn't be as successful as I am today without their guidance and help. Unequivocally, I say that. They have been
Me
terrific. Too. Yeah, it's just they're wonderful people. And if you're an author and you really, even if you can't afford to go to the summit, just start following these guys. Listen in on these calls that they offer. Sign up for some of the stuff that they offer. Absorb their knowledge because they have a lot of it. At some point, when if you can afford to go to the summit, by all means go. And if you are, like I say, if you're thinking about it, just sign up for the material. Get the material, get up to speed, learn, because there's a lot to learn about publishing and a lot to learn about marketing a book.
As we get closer to wrapping some of this up, I'm going to just say something about them and who they are and some of my experience, and then maybe we'll end by talking about just some strategies for getting every last bit from the summit. But before we do that, I'm just going to add to what you were saying, which is in the mid to late 90s, I was thinking, I only started in TV in about 93, 94, but mid to late 90s, I was already thinking about media training. I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed helping people when I was in the green room, and I would help shape their stories, but I didn't really know, how do you even get into that? And even as kind of a young 20-something, I went on some job interview somewhere, and I just looked like a young Yahoo I'll help you. And, they said, well, we work with a lot of pharmaceutical companies, and all I was thinking was, that's boring. Of course, now, many years later, I'm thinking, that's fantastic. They sound like clients who could work with for a while. I didn't know how to start. So Steve Harrison said to me, this is before they had the training calls that they give to all their people. He said, well, what if we added a media training call, or would you be interested in doing that? Yes, please. And he said, we'll pay you to do that for your time, so you can do the calls. They reinvest a lot into making that whole thing great. Anyway, I really credit him. He was really somebody who kind of gave me my first toe in. And for a few years, I was doing those calls. I don't do them now. And there are other folks who are doing it. You'll get all this perspective from actual producers who are out there, as well as their internal team who's honed and primed at what they do. But yeah, as far as the integrity, look, they'll give you your money back. If I forgot how he works it, but if you shouldn't be there, they're going to tell you in the beginning. They may say, you know what, you're close, you're not ready, do this, this, and this, and come back to us in 6 months or a year, and you're welcome to go. But it's not going to work well for you. I know they tell that to people because I've seen them come back 6 months or a year later and say, glad I went and finished whatever they told me to do. But they'll also give you your money back if, I know they have a whole thing where I think you get to go the whole first day or something, and if you don't like it and all that, they do that because they don't want people to feel like they're making some sort of huge mistake, but also that they can see how valuable it is even on day one. I think the way they've been able to build a business over all these years and expand into all these other areas, I see now they're doing stuff for speakers too, is by trying to do right by people and trying to add all the value.
They do.
And they do. Yeah, and they do. So okay, let's do a little speed round of strategies that can help people to get every last bit from the summit. You want to go first? You want to do one? I'll do one.
Well, sure. It's important to read the material that they send to you about each individual media representative and study them. They'll send it. They won't tell you who it is exactly at the beginning. They'll just give you the bio. So you just read through each person's bio and what they're looking for from a story perspective, and then you make notes. You say, okay, that guy would be good, and that's the media representative 4A or whatever the number is. They give a number for each bio. And you study it. You figure out, okay, how would I approach that person? What would I say to them? Okay, and then you rank all these people on a list in order that you'd like to see them. Maybe you want to see somebody from CNN right away, or maybe you want to talk to The View. Maybe that's a high up on your list, or maybe Good Morning America. Maybe the freelance writer for the New York Times is who you want to see. So you just rank these people on the sheet that they give you, and then they try to meet your needs and wants, and they give you a number to see that person when you go into the summit. But the important thing is to really read those bios when you get them so that you can figure out who it is you want to see. Your turn.
All right. I'm going to say you've gotten those numbers, and they break it up into, I think, 5 sessions because they don't put all 100 people there in one set. It's something like 25, 30 people at a time. And then kind of running around the room, I'm next on this line. But there are going to be some media folks who are just sitting there and nobody is coming up to them because you're already an hour or so into the whole pitch fest and their line has gone down or less people wrote them down or whatever it is, some sort of lull. Whoever was supposed to be next just hasn't run back over there the way they kind of coordinate it. And that person's sitting there. Go up to them. Go. You have nothing to lose. You say, meaning they may not be on your list at all, because there's some people you say, that person, I don't have any shot.
You never know. You never know.
And you know what? Either they may say, I had the guy who was sitting at dinner that was giving us all the good information. His wife was an ABC News producer for 2020.
Right.
So
right.
The thing is, same with some of the producers too. You may walk up and they may say, well, I work on a gardening show. I don't know, I've just picked that as something that is probably not the fit for everybody. But my wife works at 2020. Man,
yeah.
That would be perfect for her. Give it to me. I'll give it to her tonight. Wow. Talking about that. Or same thing I would do, which is I would say, I have a colleague, or I'm going to email them this and say, Jess said to send it to you.
Right. And that does work. That does work, by the way. I've done that many, many times where they said, make sure you tell them that so-and-so said, get a hold of them. In fact, I've had people from Fox News, actually, tell me to get a hold of somebody else, like at another news station. Like, get a hold of Susie at ABC News New York. This is right up her alley. I know she wants to do a story. Because, the media knows each other. A lot of them know each other. And they're friends, or they're married to one another, or whatever. And they see a good story, and they may not be able to use it, but somebody else could use it. So,
and if they don't tell you, like if I would forget to say and put in there, Jess said this would be good for you. Jess Todtfeld said it would be good. Ask them, hey, would it be okay for me to say that you connected us? And they'll probably say, yeah, sure, because they forgot to say it or they didn't think to say it. But ask them. And 99% of the time, what are they going to say? No, they just told you. Now you have this quality endorsement that's kind of going along with it because this person said, no, I should.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Definitely helps. So, and I'm happy to take a phone call if somebody wanted to call me and just ask about the summit, just in general, and people do.
What's
all
your
the time.
Phone number?
734-667-2090, 734-667-2090. And happy to talk to people about it if they want to. Not all day, but we'll be happy to talk about this. About more detail if you need some help.
And I feel like I should not just sit here quietly and say, yeah, and you can't reach out to me.
Don't call Jess.
No, it's rude. How rude of me.
Yeah.
I pick up the phone. I'll talk to anybody. Same thing. And to try to give good ideas. 646 is my number here in New York. 646-233-1424. 646-233-1424. And maybe below this video that we have our other contact information too. Throw out another good idea to make the most from the summit.
Follow up. You got to follow up with the people. You send them an email afterwards if it's appropriate. I mean, first of all, you got to take great notes, because by the end of the day, you're going to remember. You'll say, "Oh my God, what did that guy from CNN say?" You got to take notes as you go quickly, and then at the end of the day, write some better notes. And then at the end of the event, on your plane ride home, make sure you get everything organized and figure out who's going to get the first phone call or email or whatever. There's some people that you'll want to reach out to immediately. I book stuff right off the floor there in the past. In fact, I do every year. And, I'm talking to people before I leave the room, for God's sakes, talking to, media people. But the follow-up is important, and, mailing them something that says, hey, nice to meet you at the PR Summit. Here's my one sheet. You expressed interest in blah, 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 because, everybody's got a different angle. They're not all going to just take whatever your angle is right off the bat. You might kind of flesh out an angle, and that's what you end up with on a particular story. Like, for example, I had a doctor that had a book on sugar, about how you get rid of sugar in your diet. Well, CNN said, you know what, we've already done this story, but let's do one about how kids should get sugar out of the diet. Okay, so before I left the room, I had my doctor work on menus for children, and I had that in her hands by email that by the end of the night. Okay, this is what you've got to do. She liked the anti-sugar story, but she wanted it focused on kids. So it required us to kind of like step back and make a tweak and then pitch them again or send them the info. Okay. So that's all part of the follow-up. Mail them stuff at the end, email them, and stay in touch. You're creating a relationship, okay?
Right.
They may not book you today. They might book you 6 months from now, or they might book you a year from now, or they may quote you in a story that they're working on, but they're not working on it for, whatever, a couple of months,
Right.
couple of weeks, or who knows.
So I'm going to build on the various things that you just said, which is one is you must take good notes. I've even created for some of the people who go through my program, but you can create your own, just a one-page template of what should be on there. What do we talk about? What's the possible next step? Do they tell me anything? When I say do they tell me anything, sometimes I would say to somebody, call me next week. Well, you better write that one down, because a lot of times I would say that, and people just did not call me. They got home, they threw their stuff in a corner, they were exhausted, I got to get my head screwed on and figure out what I'm going to do next. Yeah, well, you didn't call me in a week. I was going to do it. So, and
you got to strike when the iron is hot. You got to know when your iron is hot and go for it. Don't wait around.
And listen closely to what these people are saying, but write it down so you have a plan of attack. And actually, what I tell people is, if you create a different sheet of paper for each of the people that you meet. So you meet, you have this 2-minute conversation, you step away, you write down stuff for 20 seconds. They said this, I'm going to do this. Ooh, what if I sent them this? Holy cow, I could send them this top 25 list that I didn't even bring up today, but that would be amazing. Do that. And you write that down. Now when you go home, or if you're flying home, or however it is that you go home, you could take these sheets and you can order them as your top prospects and your bottom prospects and the middle ones. And if you don't have a computerized system to really keep you on task, even if you each day took out the stack and said, I'm going to reach out to 3 of these people or 5 of these people, you're so ahead of everybody else who I think sometimes life takes over. You're like, oh man, I meant to go back and reach out to that person again. And the last thing that you just said that I was going to talk about, and I'll just build on, is the idea of being long-term. I talked to a woman literally yesterday. So I create relationships at the summit, and one of the things I'm after, like you just said, is relationships. So I'm after relationships. I'll do right by people and help people, and I'm not expecting anything back from them, but great things have happened. Do right by people, things will work out. So anyway, and these are what I'm talking about now are other attendees, which I've same thing for some of the media folks. But anyway, so this attendee who went through my workshop chatted with me yesterday. She said some media opportunities are happening. I said, why don't we pick up the phone instead of 19 emails and tell me what's happening. I'll give you some thoughts or advice. And I'm not trying to squeeze extra money out of her. I mean, if she wanted to do something even bigger, fine. But anyway, so we're just chatting. So she said she actually had, I think it was Good Morning America. They said, we'll do something, but we have this wacky Christmas idea and this and that. So the woman who was at the summit said, I have a lot of things going on in my personal life. I may not be able to do it now, but I can do a similar thing for Valentine's Day or for Easter. And so she's explaining it to me. And she said, but you know what, Jess, if they can't do it, you know what, then I'll do it next December. I'll do it with them. I would love to do it now. I just can't, she had other stuff happening in her personal life. I just, it'll be what it'll be, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to still be, working on this thing. It'll pay off then. So the thing is sure, you want the short term, and you may get some of the short term. That's fine. But don't give up. I tell this in a video that I have that is on the page that for my workshop, but I'll give a short version of the story, which is this guy, Mahesh Grossman, who wrote a book about how to find a ghostwriter. And he came up and he said, I can tell people how to find a ghostwriter. And I said, well, that's nice, but I think I was on Fox and Friends at the time. They want whatever the big thing of the day is, and celebrities, or the how to lose weight with eating fast food, or they want something, but that's not as niche. To me, it was not everybody in America is saying I got to have a book.
Right.
So I said, you seem like a nice guy, but I don't know what to do with that. So he said, all right, can I pitch you down the line? Sure. So he called me every month or two for probably about 8 months. And then we were heading into an election cycle. And he says, he calls up and he pitched me some idea. And I think it was okay, but I said, I don't know, you're getting closer, but no. And then he says, all right. And just as he's about to hang up, he goes, well, hey, I know you guys are, I said, we're covering this election. There were primaries on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. So there's all this stuff, and we're just knee deep in that. He goes, oh, okay. Hey, and it's like a throwaway. I could probably do a story on most of these guys wrote books. I could tell you who wrote their own book and whose was ghostwritten. Whoa. He stopped me in my tracks because he found something that worked for me. But you know what? He was politely persistent over those months. Hey, can I call you again? He created a relationship. He was a nice enough guy to always took the call. I mean, if I was there to pick up the phone. I turned to my boss and said, whoever wrote their book and whose was ghostwritten. And my boss, the executive producer of the show, said, perfect. Tomorrow, 6:45 a.m. And I'm thinking, wow, okay. I turn around, can you be on in the morning? And then the guy laughed and said, yeah. And by the way, he's on the West Coast, so it was 3:45. He had to get up at 2:30 in the morning, but he didn't care. He finally pulled it off. He said it was fun and funny to him that he's like waking up in the middle of the night and do this. But he was, it was the big payoff for the relationship that he built. And then he and I had and have, but I haven't talked to him recently. I'm probably overdue. A relationship that continued, and we helped each other on the business side. Saying, hey, you should do this and you should do that. So it was kind of a nice thing that grew from that. So be long term on these things. Think about relationships. Even those people especially those people that you meet in between, as well as the media people, always be trying to add value, give to give. I'm not reading them. I'm just rattling them off here. I'm trying to think if there's any other good ones. I think we had some good ones.
You could talk all day about the value of the PR Summit and tips on the thing. I mean, we probably ought to save it for another call.
So, and Scott, in closing on this thing, I just want to say, because Scott may not toot his own horn, maybe he is. He's a PR guy. Maybe he will do it if I give him a second to do it. But I'm going to toot your horn, which is, I met Scott, I think at one of was it at the Publicity?
At the PR Summit, yeah, it was at a PR Summit. I think you were pitching. That's when you were on with Fox News at the time.
Yeah, and you were pitching me.
Yeah.
Did I do any of your stories, by the way?
Yeah, we did a bunch.
I didn't know. I'm smiling now because I was thinking, I try to be a nice guy, but I can't remember what it was. But I met Scott back then. He was smart. He started a relationship. He's a good guy. We have helped each other in our businesses, like, hey, you should do this, and hey, you should do that. But the thing I always liked about Scott, and there is a recording that I did that's floating around somewhere, and we're due for another one, where Scott, as a book publicist, you almost shouldn't even call yourself a publicist. I know if you stop doing that, you confuse people. You approach it, the way you explained it to me, is back a bunch of years ago. You said, publicity is just, one spoke in the wheel of options of how people can get their book sold or to build out their business or to do what they need to do. And then you just started rattling off all the various other strategies. And then even the other day, you said, just Amazon. There used to be the whole bestseller strategy, but there are so many other strategies for building towards what you need to have happen, which is building your brand and getting people to maybe even buy a bigger thing or get involved in a bigger way. But he's a guy who sees that picture. I remember on that call that we did, you talked about article marketing. And then it's funny, 5 years ago, you said you weren't even on Twitter. And I know you said to me the other day when we were talking about doing this call, you said, Twitter and Facebook strategies and how you can get a Facebook ad and you can drive people to here and it's so specific how you can get the right person. These are things I don't hear other people talking about. So I'm happy to toot your horn and just say,
well, thanks.
You're a good guy and
thank you. Well,
you do right by your people.
It's a major project to promote a book, and publicity is one arrow in the quiver. And there's so many different things you can do now. You just got to do as many things as you possibly can. There's not just one thing. Like I said, there's no one recipe to make this thing work. There's no, I wish there was just one thing you can do, or just make a recipe. You got to go at it 100 different ways, and that's what we do.
It's good to crowd out the ways that don't work, or the ones that won't work for that person, or are not as smart for that person. Maybe
we were just involved with a Kickstarter campaign where an author raised $15,000 to promote her book. It was her idea, and it's like, okay, well, let's do it. So we drilled into it, and I did research, talked to a few other authors who had a successful Kickstarter campaign, got a few tips from them, came up with a few, obviously, that from my experience as a publicist, we promoted this thing, and to her credit, she raised $15,000. It was terrific. This was fun,
Wow.
Now that's not going to work for everybody, and she also had some good contacts out there, but she was able to reach out through her own social media, Facebook, and some other things, and able to reach some people that were really wanting to help her succeed, and that also shared her vision. And so they're out there. So anyway, that was kind of fun. So there's things like that can be used to promote a book, and that's just an element in the overall marketing campaign, because when you do a Kickstarter campaign, it's like 30 days. You've got a goal. You got to really focus. You can't fool around. And if you raise $14,000 and your goal is 15, you don't get to 14,000. You don't get to keep that. You got to hit your goal. So it's really a focused effort. So it actually, as a book marketing method, I think it's pretty cool. So when appropriate, I will suggest that to an author. But it's it's a lot of work. So the money just doesn't flow in because you throw it up there. You got to you got to hustle it. So, but anyway, that stuff wasn't even around a couple years ago. So
wasn't.
No.
Yeah, a lot of these things weren't even around, and it's changing, and people have to customize for themselves.
And the competition is crazy. You got whatever number you believe. There's at least 300,000 books published every single year. That's mind-boggling. Do the math, on that. That's just, it's a few hundred, it's several hundred a day. So if you want to climb to the top of the heap, you've got to really hustle the book. I mean, years ago, the Today Show got 100 books a day shipped into them, and God knows what it is today. But it's an incredible number. Now, if I could say something about you, obviously, you help take the rough edge off of people, and you give them the skills they need to learn that they must know in order to speak effectively, succinctly, and from a promotional standpoint on TV, radio, and interviews. You teach them how to speak in sound bites. You teach them what's important to get across, and everybody needs media training. I don't care who they are and how many years they've been doing this. Everybody needs it. You'll find out stuff that you didn't know, and you'll learn what you need to know to be a good speaker in the media. Somebody who's able to convey their points succinctly is able to sell more books or sell more widgets or whatever it is that they're selling and promoting. I know you work with politicians, you work with ambassadors, you work with authors, inventors, anybody who needs to communicate effectively to their public. With your experience as a producer for ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox News, you obviously know what a good segment is on TV, and you know how to get the point across because you had to coach people before they went on the show that you were booking for, so that those people knew what to say, where your producer was going to go, where the host was going to go with the questioning, so that they did a good job. Because you didn't want some train wreck showing up. You want it to be good. And I'm sure as a booker, you didn't book people who couldn't communicate with you effectively over the phone. If they can't sell it over the phone, then they're not going to be able to sell it live on TV. So you've got that experience. You've shared that. You've shared that with your people that retain you, and it's money well spent. So I endorse you wholeheartedly. So.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'll tell you, the thing I'm most proud of is the pieces I've added over the last few years, which are pieces designed to give people more confidence. The more you pull the curtain back and get rid of the unknown from any of these, the process of what's happening, then the more confident people feel. And even in the media training book I'm trying to finish here. Hopefully will be out at some point when people are listening to this, but I got to sit and finish it and stop talking. It are sections on how people can feel better during the process. So, one step is to have the tools, and another is to really feel it and own it and have that confidence to say, I got this, I feel amazing, this is going to be great, whether it's on the pitching side or it's on the media side. And anytime I feel a little promotional, I always try to give something free away. So if you go to, where is it? If you go right to my main website, successinmedia.com, you can sign up. I think it says newsletter, but it's really better than a newsletter. You can sign up for media training videos that you can get from me. Oh, wait, there's one even better. And you don't even have to sign up. You can sign up if you want to sign up, but you can get stuff for free. MediaTrainingToolKit.com. There you go. And they can go there, even though it's nice to get people's email address and send other stuff to them, you can get a whole bunch of free stuff. Although you can sign up for more stuff on that page, but there's a lot of top 10 lists on different types of interviews. So anyway, I think we did it. You and I said we should get on the phone, we should record a thing, give people what's in our heads, and hopefully we did it, and everybody can reach out to us if there's some burning question, but hopefully we added to the equation today.
I think so. And the bottom line, the opening line was, the Publicity Summit worth it? And yes, definitely yes. I'm proof of the pudding because I keep going. If I didn't, I vote with my feet and my wallet.
And, I've gotten amazing things out of it in the relationships. I think that they do right by people. For what people could spend with a publicist, and Scott's a publicist. He's in the room. Earmuffs. Put your earmuffs on.
No, I think, listen, it's supplemental. I have clients, I tell clients to go. If they're the right type of client, I say go to the event, I'll go there too. It'll be a double whammy. There's plenty of work to do. Don't worry. There's plenty of work to do when it comes to promoting a book. There's enough to go around.
And that's why Scott's good at what he does, because he knows, there's plenty of angles on things, and there's plenty of ways that you can go about this thing. That's right. But for somebody who want to get a lot of bang for their buck and go, you're going to meet all these people, you got to do the stuff that we said when we were trying to rattle off those takeaways, I think I'll have a really good experience. All right, with that, we're going to give the goodbye, and thanks for listening.
All right, thank you.
All right, take care, everybody.